Okay. Welcome to HVRC's Creating a Community Greenhouse Gas Inventory webinar. My name is Melanie. I am a Climate Smart Communities Coordinator for the Mid-Hudson Valley region. First, a bit about HVRC. We are one of 10 regional planning organizations in New York State and serve the 7 counties of the Mid-Hudson region. We help municipalities assess and understand information and grants from the state and federal level and provide technical assistance on environmental and sustainability programs, economic development, materials management, and water resources. Our programmatic areas are funded by NYSERDA, the DEC, Hudson River Estuary Program, EDA. Please feel free to reach out to us on any of these areas. And this work would not be possible without the annual support we receive from our county government members. So this webinar will prepare you all to create your own community greenhouse gas inventory. We will go over what a community inventory is, what's included, a background on the 2010 Mid-Hudson Regional Inventory, as well as the 2021 inventory update that was completed last year. I'll give an overview of the associated tools that were created with the update, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. And feel free to put any questions in the chat as we go through, and then we'll get to them at the end. So first, the Climate Smart Communities Coordinator Program is part of the Department of Environmental Conservation's Climate Smart Communities Program, which funds additional technical assistance for government operations and community greenhouse gas inventories and climate action plans. So through this program, HVRC hosted a series of cohorts to provide technical assistance to municipalities in the Mid-Hudson region that were developing these inventories and plans. And so the 2021 inventory update was done as part of the community greenhouse gas inventory cohort that we ran last fall. And the participating municipalities helped check their utility and census data for their individual communities, and were a big part of this process. So what is a community greenhouse gas inventory? It accounts for emissions associated with activities occurring within a community's boundaries, including electricity consumption, transportation, solid waste emissions. The community inventory can establish a baseline and identify opportunities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions for the community at large. The following focus areas are included in a community inventory. First is buildings and stationary energy, so any energy that's used in residential, commercial, and industrial buildings. Next is transportation, so fuel consumption for both on-road and off-road vehicles. Waste and wastewater, which include process emissions from landfills, wastewater treatment plants, and private septic systems. Next is industrial processes. Agriculture, and then energy supply, which includes energy generation, and then any fugitive emissions, including losses during transmission, distribution of electricity and natural gas. So some background on the existing regional inventories. As part of developing regional sustainability plans, NYSERDA funded a series of contractors to prepare regional greenhouse gas inventories for each of New York State's 10 economic development regions. So the Mid-Hudson Regional Inventory was done by the consultant group ICF, and they used a 2010 baseline. The region's emissions in that inventory were allocated down to the municipal level. So many municipalities have gotten credit for in the Climate Smart Communities program for using this 2010 inventory. So based on the 2010 regional inventory methods and the 2015 regional and community inventory guidance, I updated the entire 2010 regional inventory using 2021 data, or the closest year available. So in some cases that was 2020 or 2022 data. And this inventory update provides updated community-wide emissions estimates for each county, city, town, and village in the region. Here are some of the data sources that were used to do this update. I'll be sharing this slide deck after the webinar, so all of the links that are included here if you are interested in exploring some of the different data sources. And I can answer any questions or go more in depth about data sourcing during our Q&A. So as I mentioned earlier, emissions have been allocated to the municipal level based on available demographic and geographic data. It wasn't possible to fully allocate all emissions from each sector in the region. So emissions from rail, marine, air, and land use and land change, forestry have not been allocated to the municipal level. The inventory was allocated to the village level, but all village populations are included in town populations, so therefore all village emissions are also included as part of town emissions totals. So if you are a town that's interested in town-only emissions, then you should subtract village emissions from your totals, and I'll talk more about that when we look at the summary data. And this breakdown comes from the full methodology that will also be shared after this webinar if you're interested in looking more about the allocation breakdowns. So now I'll go through some of the tools that were created as part of this update. And first is the summary data spreadsheet that shows your community emissions data broken out by sector. So this tool allows you to input the name of your municipality, and it'll generate summary tables and summary figure for you all to get your data. So Allison, you're the only one I can see right now, so I'm going to do Orange Town. And to note, you have to include town of, village of, or city of when you're inputting your municipality. It will not populate if you just put Orange Town. So here is the breakdown of by sector of Orange Town's emissions. These two, this table and this figure, are what you will pull to input into your community inventory report. If you keep scrolling down here, you'll see another option if you want to compare your emissions to another community. So if you're interested in comparing to the county that you're in, then you can see how your town or your municipality's emissions compare against the larger county data. If you keep scrolling, you'll see all the same data of all of the municipalities in the region, just broken out by county. And this is all the data here. So this is the first step of getting your community emissions data. The next tab in this spreadsheet is a wastewater emissions calculator. So following the 2010 methods, which only included emissions from wastewater treatment, but not septic systems. So this inventory also only includes emissions from wastewater treatment, So if you are a community that has some or all of your residents that have private septic systems, the estimate that is currently in place here does not include private septic systems. So there are a couple of scenarios here. If your community is entirely on a wastewater treatment plant, you're part of the sewer system, you can choose to keep the estimate that's in there already and take that wastewater estimate as part of your emissions and not do anything further. But if you'd like to calculate your wastewater emissions more accurately, then you can complete this calculator here. So there are two places that you can input data. The population, if you are entirely on septic systems, that you would only fill in this population served by private septic, or if you're a combination of both, then you would input the population on private septic and on wastewater treatment plant. Some municipalities only track data of the number of households or number of hookups to the sewer system. So if you're only able to get that data, we're using the average household size of 2.8, which is here. If you need to do that calculation, you would multiply your number of households by 2.8. So once you input your data, it'll generate a new wastewater emissions total for you. And this you have to take this and bring it back over to your summary table and input it here in the wastewater column. So once you update that number, you can override this and it'll populate your new emissions total, and the tables will populate. And so you only have to input in that one section. Again, this is only for communities that are either a combination of private septic systems or private septic and wastewater treatment. If you're entirely on a sewer system, you can leave the estimate as is and not go through this additional step. Next in this spreadsheet is some data about community choice aggregation. So there are two CCAs in our region that we have data for: Westchester Power and then Jewel Community Power. So this data is just here for your information. It's already been accounted for in the residential emissions estimates for the municipalities that are listed here. We decided to keep this in because it shows you the emissions before CCA and the emissions after CCA. So if you're interested in getting your community involved in a CCA, you can look at these emissions reductions as a way to encourage your community to get involved. And so the communities that this has been applied to are listed here. And again, it's already been accounted for and here for your information. And then finally, in this spreadsheet, it's just a sector descriptions. So you're aware of what was involved in each of these sectors. So next, any questions about this before we move on? Okay.
Well, Melanie, there was a question in the chat. Joseph Londa had a question. I did answer it, but I thought it might be good for everyone to hear. He asked if the spreadsheet is following ICLEI practices and formulas. And I responded that this inventory is using the 2015 regional inventory guidance from New York. But in general, I think it's relatively similar to what ICLEI recommends.
Yes, it is. The community protocol guidance is pretty similar. We're so just following
some deviance, but not significant.
No, right. I just was following the New York State community guidance, but which used ICLEI's protocol as a guide for creating their own guidance. That makes sense.
Charlotte has another. Charlotte and Kathleen Gray both have questions in the chat. You want me to read them out, and you can answer. Charlotte asks, the only data we need is from the census, ? And no UER or anything else?
Yes, so every municipality's 2020 census data, as well as utility energy registry data, was already pulled. So all of the data that's in here is pulling from 2022 utility UER data and 2020 census data. So that's already been updated.
And Kathleen asks, is the info accessed through the DEC website?
The info from this inventory or which info specifically? All of the resources here, the spreadsheet, the report template, the methods will be available on our website.
Did that answer your question, Kathleen?
Michelle, do you have a question?
I do. First off, this is really exciting and amazing work. Unfortunately, my chat seems to be frozen, or else I would have asked the question in the chat. But for wastewater treatment plant emissions data, could you I was just wondering where the estimates came from, because I know it varies so much community to community. I know or if you don't want to, I know it could be, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole on it, but if you could briefly touch on that.
Sure, yes. So we used countywide data for this. So getting the total number per county of people who are serviced by a wastewater treatment plant. And then used the number that we had for everyone that was part of the sewer system, subtract the rest, assuming that they were on private septic systems, and took the population of everyone that was on the sewer system. And there's a state inventory tool for wastewater emissions calculator that we put the total population on the sewer system into that calculator to get the wastewater emissions. So that's why it's only accounting for wastewater treatment emissions and not the private septic, and more clearly in depth written out in the methods. But that's the brief overview.
Okay, thank you very much.
Got 2 more questions in the chat.
Okay.
Jim Hayes asks, how are residential building heating emissions calculated?
Good question. So natural gas consumption data was taken from the utility energy registry. If your household is not heated by natural gas, we were using the census home heating fuel type survey. So that has information by if you are heating your home by anything else that's not natural gas, essentially. So that accounts for people, electricity, heat pumps, wood, solar, other fuel types. And so that was, that data was pulled in to supplement the direct utility data we were getting for natural gas.
And Jolanda asks, on transportation, can you drill down on vehicle miles traveled and how throughway miles are being handled?
Vehicle miles traveled was, that data we got from the Department of Transportation. That's at the county level. And so that was portioned to the municipal level by population. So it does include throughway miles, but the DOT has breakdowns for road type. So if you're interested in looking at that further, we can share that with you. Okay, is that it in the chat?
Yeah, for the moment.
Okay, so I'm gonna move over to the report template. So this this includes a background that describes the process to update the inventory, and a place for you to input those figures. There's instructions for what you need to address here. There's really only 2 pages that need your attention and for you to update for your community specific information, and the rest of it is just the methods that are in here that meet the CSC requirements for the community inventory action. So it includes this background. This is essential for Climate Smart credit, is this community profile that should indicate how this the regional inventory is addresses your community. So you're not just saying that you got this from the regional inventory and not directly relating it to your community. So you're describing your community profile, and then you should highlight any of the actors that may be impacting your emissions. So for example, if you have high commercial sector emissions, or does that mean that you have, or you should explain why you think that you have high commercial. So do you have a college or university or large hospital in your community, or do you have industry? These should all be addressed here. So your key findings is where you'll put those figures that came from the summary spreadsheet. And then you'll note going forward which emissions or which sectors have the highest emissions that you plan to focus on. And this section should also highlight the areas or any future goals that your community has, and then the areas that you, or the actors that you want to engage to start to lower these emissions. So these are the 2 pages, these are the instructions that you have to follow, and the rest of this document are the methods that comply with the Climate Smart requirements. Any questions about this?
Mayor Armacost had a question in the chat about the fact that unincorporated areas of towns versus villages are included together in the town emissions, and she asked whether that means there's double counting. And I was typing in the answer, but essentially, it could mean there's double counting, right? If both the town and the village did an inventory and they were added together, that would be double counting. And you noted earlier how towns can remove the village emissions from their total if they so choose. It's sort of up to them how they want to be presenting their information to their town residents, if they want to include the villages or not. And I also said this was not something we decided on necessarily, right? This is how the data was presented to. Was not presented to us, was in the original inventory, right? That was done in 2010. And we were just simply updating the 2010 inventory. We made some changes were relevant, but yeah.
Yeah, right. So any towns that have multiple villages in them or just one, those village emissions are included in the town total. So right, it would be up to the town to remove the village emissions if they just want a town only emissions summary. And then of course the village emissions should be seen as on their own, just including the village. So I touched on this a little bit, but the Climate Smart Communities Action PE2 for Community Greenhouse Gas Inventory, using this regional inventory and pulling your community data and writing your profile, like I mentioned in the report, make you eligible for 16 points, all 16 points for this action. Something to highlight again is that your report needs to clearly, using regional data, your report needs to clearly present the data that is relevant to your community. And then the second requirement is that you are making this report available to the public. So either putting it on your municipality's website or making it publicly available somewhere. So again, I'll share these slides with these links, but maybe we can put it in the chat as well. All of these resources are going to be on our website. You can download the methodology by itself, the report template, and then the summary data spreadsheet. And I think that's it. Yep, here's my contact information. All of the resources will be shared as well in a follow-up to this webinar, and I can take any questions.
Melanie, in Ulster County, I think the town of Saugerties and the village of Saugerties, as well as New Paltz Town and New Paltz Village, are separate municipalities. So I'm wondering if those are reflected as an exception when you talk about how town incorporates village, because of the fact that they're separate municipalities.
Right, any separate municipality will show up as separate, but all of the, like in the back end, all of the municipality and population data, if a village was part of a town, they were linked together based on it's called a FIPS code. So if there was a village that fell underneath a town, that's when they would be linked together. So in the example that we were just talking about with the town of Greenberg, all of those villages are linked to the town of Greenberg, so they would have to remove those emissions. But if they are separate, then they will be separate.
Okay, so it's based on a municipality rule. If it's a separate municipality, they're not subsets
Right.
of the town. Okay. I also wanted to just follow up on the vehicle miles traveled. You said they were allocated, so for Ulster County, they were allocated on population, not road miles. Is that right?
Right. So the data that we got was broken out by county, and then it was allocated by population.
If we wanted, because transportation is such a big piece of the emissions, if we wanted to get VMTs based on road miles, is that data available?
It could be for by your county's metropolitan planning organization. They normally have transportation data. We weren't able to get further data than county level in the time frame to complete this inventory. But yes, if you are able to find better local data, reach out to me and we can work on inputting your local data in and updating for your community.
Okay.
And could I also
Sure.
just step in here? So for Ulster County, just because I forget who just asked that, but I happen to be on the webinar, but Melanie, let's coordinate that for Ulster County because we do have that data set.
Okay, great. Yeah,
Okay.
we can work on updating that.
So who's the primary contact point for that? Is that you, Michelle, or you, Melanie?
I can put my email. Wait, I can't. My chat's frozen.
I could do it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
or
Thank you. Please put my email in the chat, Eleanor, and then feel free to email me and we can discuss that.
Great, thank you.
How exactly do you remove the village information if your charts show the town and the village?
Yep, great question. So I can pull up the the table again here. Kathleen, what's your community?
Town of Saugerties.
Okay, well, so this Saugerties, like we were just saying, is separate, right? Is that what you just said, Joe?
The village is included in the town, and so I'm wondering, I believe our report for greenhouse gas emissions was government operations, then we would not want to, if we were going to compare the current information, we would want to separate out the village because that's not in our original greenhouse gas inventory.
Yep. Yep, so you would just do both. You would put Village of Saugerties and you can see the total. And then you would put down here and you can leave these figures as is, but in your report write out that you're subtracting. You can change the total and subtracting the total from the village.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep. Charlotte, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just, so as you know, as part of your previous cohort, I got the behind, I've been catching up on videos. I'm trying to understand the difference between the Mid-Hudson 2021 summary data and then the Mid-Hudson greenhouse gas user-friendly, which is a lot the same, but then the tabs are different.
Yep, so this has just been updated from the using the user-friendly. That user-friendly is just the 2010 data. So this has just been updated to include this additional.
Okay, I should look at the 2021 and ignore the other one.
Yep, yeah, so this 2021 is the updated data.
And then in terms of the adding in the wastewater emissions, there is already data in there. When I go into the calculation, it is a little different from the data that's in there.
Right, so the data that's in there is based on the county total. And so for Irvington, it's likely 100%, right, is on the sewer system. You likely don't have any septic. So you can leave this, that emissions estimate in there.
Thanks.
Yep. Marcus, do you have a question?
Yeah, going back to what Kathleen said, I thought on the inventory, the village of Saugerties and the town of Saugerties were listed as separate municipalities. And then vis-a-vis our discussion before, I thought you said if they were listed separately, then the figures were not included. In other words, the village of Saugerties was not included in the town of Saugerties. Could you clear that up?
Sure.
Can you tell me for sure if the statistics for the village of Saugerties is included in the town of Saugerties, or is it not?
Well, it depends on your municipality. So all of the municipalities in the entire region are listed separately. Like if you look down here, it's just separated by town and then by village. So if you know that your town includes a village,
How do you know that? In the statistics, I mean. They
Well-
operate as separate entities. They are separate municipalities. They operate separately. Now, vis-a-vis this listing here, they are listed separately. How else would we know that these statistics that you have are included? What tells us that it is or isn't? Because in one sense you said that it wasn't, in another sense you said it was. So how do we make that distinction for sure relative to your statistics?
that would be something that you need to check with your municipality. Like most towns and villages work separately, but and function separately, but some towns have villages included. And I'm not sure that I'm fully explaining this, but like in the Greenberg example, that the town of Greenberg has 6 villages that fall within the town. They all operate separately. Is that making any sense?
Well,
I think this
I don't know.
actually, can I jump in for a second? I think this
Sure.
might relate back to the FIPS codes, right, Melanie? Because that's where this all comes down to, is these census designated FIPS codes. And each municipality has its own FIPS code. And we use that data, and so did the 2010 inventory, to assign emissions to municipalities. So I think what we can go back, and we can help Socrates do this, and any other towns/villages that are confused about whether their emissions are included, we can go look at the FIPS code and determine whether or not the village emissions are included in the town for your specific municipality.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah, so please reach out afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah. Mary, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Just to clarify, with respect to wastewater and septic systems, did I understand that if, which in Saugerties, we have wastewater system and we also have septics. So what's not included in the wastewater, that then everything outside of the wastewater is considered septic. Is that correct in terms of the data?
Right. So the what's included in the wastewater emissions here are just sewer system hookups to wastewater treatment plants. So just the people that are serviced by wastewater treatment plants, and then anyone else would be on a private septic system, and that is not included in this in the wastewater sector total.
Right. So we don't know how many septic systems there are, and of course we don't know what the emissions are from those septic systems. Is there a way to determine how many septic systems are in a municipality?
Yeah, your municipality has that data, or should have that data. What you could do to backtrack and get this information is ask for the number of households that are part of the sewer system. And then you can get that population and just subtract it from your total population. And you can email me, Mary, and we can work on updating that. But you would just take the population that's on the sewer system, subtract it from your total, and then you would get the population that's
Very good.
on private.
Makes sense. Thank you, Melanie.
Yep. Michelle, do you have another question?
Yeah, just same thing, as transportation, just for Ulster County, we're working on this at a county level, and then also for the specific municipalities. So just want to coordinate and prevent, everyone trying to gather this on their own.
Yeah. Could I comment on that? I'm speaking, this is Jim Hayes, Village of Tuxedo Park. When we did our inventory, there is no VMT data for Orange County that we had access to. We didn't find any. I spoke with the county, they don't have any. So we used state data and scaled it down to village level based on population. What did you do, Melanie? Because you wouldn't have had VMT data for Orange County either.
I was able to get, I got data from the state Department of Transportation, and they were able to get me VMT for Orange County. So I have VMT for each of the counties in our region.
Okay. So I could get that from you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. But that you did use that in calculating our greenhouse gas emissions from traffic.
I did,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. Good. Our county should know that, but they don't seem to.
Any other questions?
A couple more in the chat. Kristen asks, could the county departments of health be sources for a number of septic systems? Do you know that, Melanie? You've talked to some folks, right?
I think in some counties that's the case. I think Dutchess County mentioned that the health department might have data, but Kristen, we can connect you with Michelle for the Ulster County specific data, since they're also working on that at the county level. So anyone in Ulster County, like Michelle mentioned, you can email me or and we can coordinate getting you in touch with Michelle to get the Ulster County specific data. Yep, Joe says that's true for Putnam County. So Putnam County Department of Health would be a good source for number of septic systems.
And I think in general, it's just definitely good to remember or think that, you know, this inventory was, Melanie did this, it's for over 200 municipalities, right? So there's going to be local data that you might have that we were either, you know, not able to get for every municipality, or we didn't have the, you know, the energy to reach out to 205 different municipalities, right, to do that. So the spreadsheet is, you know, is editable on purpose, right? So if you have better data, you can work with Melanie and we can get you emissions, you know, or, you know, work with your municipal government to get better data for whichever category that you feel like is lacking. And most municipalities will be able to get better data for wastewater, which is why Melanie inserted that better wastewater tab. So you can make a better distinction. Anyone who wants to can do that.
If we do our own bottoms up greenhouse gas inventory, do you want us to provide you what we develop for consolidation?
Sure. Yeah, that would be great to see if anyone does their own.
We're getting ready to kick off our greenhouse gas inventory, which is we do on an every 5-year cycle. So we're basically doing 2023, and most of the actions that we took were actually in 21 and 22. So that's why we really want to inventory 23.
Yeah, that's great. Hopefully see a nice reduction.
We shall see. We might be surprised.
Well, we can also, if you want to reach out once you do that inventory, we can also work with anyone who has multiple inventories to understand the comparison between years and look at that. That reminds me, I completely forgot to mention that in the municipal summary data spreadsheet, we did include the year 2010 data that came from the previous regional inventory. So your 2010 total emissions are located here in this column, and then we also calculated the percent change from 2010. So you can see and compare from 2010 to 2021 what the percent change has been.
That's good news.
Yes, definitely. Mary, do you have a question?
Yeah. In the building sector, have you broken out municipal buildings as opposed to residential, or is it just residential? Is it both?
So municipal buildings are included in commercial from the Utility Energy Registry. So they provide data on residential, commercial, and industrial buildings. And so all your government buildings are included in commercial.
Is there a way to break that out? Because we have done our government inventory, greenhouse gas inventory. So we know what our buildings are emitting. So is there a way to break that out to make it?
No, unfortunately, we don't know. Because of the privacy standards, like from the utility and how they're reporting the data to the Utility Energy Registry, we don't know what any of the accounts are in commercial. We can't identify them in any way. But the average, I guess, standard, that percentage of your government emissions are included in your community, right? And I think the average that we've been mentioning is 2 to 3%. So 2 to 3% of your community emissions, or 2 to 3% of your community emissions can be attributed to your government operations. And of course, if you have your government operations emissions, you can compare.
Okay, thank you.
And
Yep.
Basil Ekblad from DEC is not able to join via audio right now, but she messaged me to say that, actually, let me pull up exactly what she said. So the CSC certification requirements for community greenhouse gas inventories do call for the emissions just for the applicant. So towns should subtract the village emissions where possible. And we should add that to our guidance, Melanie.
Great. Thank you.
But for the record, as I told Dazzle, this was how it was done in the 2010 inventory, but it's good that we're learning this now and we're able to adjust it.
Making government operations don't include schools, but schools are included in your community.
Are they in the commercial sector or the residential sector?
That's a really good question. I don't know if we ever got confirmation about this, but my instinct is to say that they're part of commercial.
Yeah, for sure.
What about the universities?
I would also say probably commercial. Really, the only thing that's in industrial is industrial, like something really, really large. And most municipalities don't really have industrial emissions. You can see some of these communities in Dutchess County. Few of them have industrial emissions. Any other questions?
Yeah, Melanie, how did you handle, we have in our village, the homes are all heated with the very few exceptions with number 2 fuel oil. How did you deal with that? We do have some propane and we do have a little natural gas, but most of it's a number 2 fuel oil.
Yep, so that data we got from the census home heating fuel type, so we know the number of households in each community that are on natural gas or fuel oil or using any other heating fuel type. So those emissions are calculated with those respective fuel types emissions factors, but they're all accounted for in your residential sector.
Okay, but I mean, you're using statewide data?
Yes, it is statewide data. And because that survey is not part of the general census, it's a small sample size, it's an estimate. So if you have better data for that, we can certainly update it.
That's what we did when we did our inventory. We did it the way you did it. We don't have anything better.
Okay,
Well,
yeah.
We tried to get data from the local deliverers of fuel oil, but that just didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, it's really hard to get data from them. Any other questions? Okay. So all of the resources will be emailed. Please reach out to me if you, as you go through this, you need any assistance. I'm happy to help.
Okay, thank you very much, Melanie.
You're welcome. Take care.
Too.
Thank you.